In this episode, I talk about dip testing versus inking up pens, good paper for beginners, and some fairly heavy personal stuff. Well, hello there, Brian Goulet here of gouletpens.com, and it is episode number 127 of Goulet Q&A, my weekly video Q&A session. So I'm coming off of not being here last week, did publish interview with Anna Reinert of the Well-Appointed Desk, and she is a rock star, and I'm so glad we got to interview her. So I have seen a lot of your comments. I know a lot of you have enjoyed that. We got to talk about some kind of different stuff than normal because she's in kind of a tangential world dealing with some non-fountain pen stuff. So she had some cool stuff to talk about, so it was really neat. I'm glad we got to publish that out last week. I was actually, I'll go ahead and get right into the personal stuff. I was supposed to go and visit my cousin up in Boston, and I flew up there and I flew back about 6 hours later because unfortunately Rachel and I were expecting our third child, and we had a miscarriage last week. We talked about it in our personal message in the newsletter this week, and we took a whole week off to grieve and kind of go through the physical, stuff of that process, and it's been a really, really difficult time for us personally. The last couple of Q&As I've alluded to, we've had personal stuff going on. We, obviously knew about the pregnancy, and Rachel had some kind of complications along the way. But even still, we were rolling along nicely, and then it kind of came out of the blue that it just wasn't meant to be for us. So it's been a very trying time for us. I will say our team has been amazing. We literally were just like, we can't deal with things right now. So we just left for a week and stayed home, and really were not involved in much of the business activity for a week, which is unfortunate circumstances, but it's so great to have a team here that can cover things. We still launched products, we still, did a lot of stuff, and probably most of you didn't even really notice that much anything had changed. But that is where Rachel and I are right now, and it's a very, very intense kind of thing to go through. The thing that we've also learned going through it is that it's way more common than you think it is, and we feel a lot of pain as a result of it. This is the biggest kind of loss that we've had in our personal lives in a while. But unfortunately, through talking to other people, we realized that it's affected a lot more people than we ever knew. So we felt that it was important for us to speak about it, because it's something, much like anxiety that Rachel has talked about struggling with before. It's something that is way more common than you think, but not a lot of people talk about it. They kind of suffer in silence. So we are feeling a kind of a social responsibility, or calling, if you will, to be more open about it than most people probably would be. So that's why we put it in our personal message in the newsletter. That's why I'm talking about it right now. Originally, we talked about Rachel and I shooting, this part together in the Q&A, and I'm shooting this on Wednesday afternoon. We just put out our newsletter. We have an outpouring of support and emails and stuff that are coming to her right now, and was not feeling able to speak about it in a video. So it's affecting us, but at the same time, we have deep faith, and that's really what's kind of carrying us through. Not to get all preachy on you and all that kind of stuff, but something like this can either, as a couple, tear you apart or bring you together, and it's brought us together. So it's been something we've really been grappling with. It's something that we're going to be, kind of grieving on for a while, but we're finding strength in our faith right now, and it's giving us a great perspective about kind of the things that are most important in life. So not to totally bum you out or anything, but that's just the reality of what we have going on in our lives. And, even though we, have this kind of public perception of what our life is like, we try to be more open with you guys about some of what goes on, and this is just real life people stuff that we have going on. Apparently it's 20 to 25% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, and That's a really staggering number to think about, and we've now been affected by that, so it's something we'll carry with us forever. Though we didn't know the gender because we weren't that far along. Rachel was about 10 weeks along. We didn't know the gender, but we really feel in our hearts that it was a girl, so we've named her Hannah Grace, and we are going to forever think of her as our third child. So getting a little teary-eyed, trying to make it through, but we really have been grieving hard. The team has been so great. Our family's been really supportive, and I did feel that it was important to kind of continue on. I will grieve, but I'll have moments of grief that will be kind of sprinkled throughout my day, and I've talked about it now, so I'm ready to talk about some pens. So to do a completely hard shift over into some pen stuff, what else we've been up to in the last week? We did physical inventory on Wednesday, which went fairly successfully. That's always a very kind of a stressful time for us. Anyone in a retail business, when you have to like shut down your store and then physically count every single thing you have. And then you never know, like, okay, am I going to be missing all kinds of stuff, or am I going to have all this extra stuff that I didn't know about, and all this kind of stuff. It can be kind of a stressful time, but our team has been awesome. They rocked it out in a matter of hours. Everything's been reconciled, and we're in pretty good shape. So it's always a big win when we have a good physical inventory. We came back from physical inventory. We've been working for forever to try to get FedEx available on our site. It's mostly working, except some of our international rates are not right. They're right in our back end, but not on the front end of our site. And of course, like, the developer's out, and so we're trying to get that worked out. It's like, anybody who's involved in like any type of web coding kind of stuff, it's like anytime you try and fix a bug, things always go wrong. Anytime you run something well in a test environment and then you roll it out into production, it's always going to have these crazy things that happen. So as of this moment when I'm recording this at 3:54 Eastern time on Wednesday, we are still not seeing the proper rates for our international FedEx shipments. They're way too high, way too high. We're seeing listed rates and not our discounted rates. So I'm really sorry about that, and it's going to cause some frustration. So I know it's kind of in retrospect. I'm really hoping it's going to be fixed by the time this video publishes, but in case it's not, just know that we're working on it. It has been an epic saga to try to get these rates correct on our site. Way harder than you would think it would be, but eventually we will get it correct. I did not do Q&A last week, so I have a little bit of catch up to do in terms of product announcements. The TWSBI came out with their Al-Lava, which is basically orange. So TWSBI is now kind of calling it lava/orange, but it's really the same thing. We didn't, we use their pictures and stuff like that. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but it's really the same thing as orange. If you got it from us and you're not happy with it, just let us know. We'll take care of it. We'll take it back. But it's really the same thing as orange. So if you didn't get a chance to get the orange, then get the lava, because it's the same color, and you'll be really happy. If you wanted a different color and you're really not happy about it, let us know and we'll take care of it. So that's been a little bit of drama, but everybody's been fairly reasonable about it. Also got in a new platinum pen. It's not all that often that we get a whole new platinum pen, but they have one. It's a platinum Mach-E pen. So we've got Pilot Mach-E, the Namiki Mach-E. So the platinum one comes in this cool box. We don't often do a lot with the platinum Mach-E stuff, but this is a limited edition that really I kind of became infatuated with, so we kind of picked it up. It's got a bottle of ink and some other cool stuff, but it's got this really, really cool design. So this is off their like President model of pen. So it's a larger size pen. It uses the President nib, their larger nib with kind of like the Art Deco design on it. It is the raised Mach-E, so it's a more advanced technique. It's a bit of a pricey pen. It's in the $1,500 list price, but it's really cool. It's got a dragon that's swallowing a sword, and the story is that I don't know the full story. I should have looked it up at the guy's name, but guy was fighting the devil, and he ultimately changed into this dragon to swallow the devil, who is the sword. So it's a pretty awesome looking dragon swallowing a devil sword. So it's pretty cool looking. So that's pretty neat. So for those of you that are into that, it's pretty cool. I really should have looked up the story more. Sorry about that. But it's on our site. The Field Notes Byline has come out. That's pretty cool. So Field Notes did a reporter pad. So I still got it in the plastic because I haven't gotten mine yet. I grabbed this one off the shelf, so I don't want to rip open the plastic yet. But it's a reporter pad, steno pad. So it's a flip top, and it's got a receipt pocket as well. So it's a wire bound in the top. So something kind of interesting, different than what Field Notes has done before. So check that out if you are interested. We also announced the new Edison Nouveau Premier in the summer edition, which is called Neptune's Pearl. So it's a darker blue that has kind of some black swirls that kind of outline these lighter blue translucent ones. So it's definitely kind of a translucent material. So if you eyedropper convert it, you can really see what's going on in there. You can kind of see the converter through it. You can see the nib through the cap. Really kind of neat. So very kind of summery, oceany kind of color that we have going on there. So we're excited about this. Water Lily was a tough one to follow up. But we thought this one would be a nice addition to the line. So we have those available now. We also have the Lamy logo. This came out last week. The Lamy logo in Twilight and Pearl. The logo is a pen that doesn't really get a lot of love, honestly, but I think it should. So it's kind of neat that they came out with new colors for that. So check those out. They're pretty cool. And then the Visconti Watermark. I don't have my personal one yet, but so I don't want to like go digging into somebody's and showing it, but really kind of cool pen. Those have been out, so we announced those since last week. And then the Clairefontaine wire bounds, the A4 wire bounds, the larger notebooks, are now available by individual color. They used to come in a sorted pack, and we wouldn't be able to, guarantee you a certain color, but now they have them by individual color. So that's kind of cool. And they're more expensive, but that's because they're larger. So it's actually a higher sheet count, and they're by color. So I think, honestly, that particular size in the assorted pack is so popular that the price is actually lower on those than it really should be, in line with the prices of the rest of the notebooks. So the by color one seems a little more expensive in price by like the sheet count compared to the assorted pack, but even still, it's an option now. And then Diamine just came out with two new inks called Oxford Blue and Classic Green. Oxford Blue is really kind of like a darker blue velvet, majestic blue color, and Classic Green is kind of like a nice like racing green. So that's really kind of cool. So Diamine continuing to come out with nice colors. And yeah, that's a lot. We've got a lot going on. All right. Pen and writing questions. I'll get into it. I only chose 7 questions this week. I'll be completely honest and say like some of these questions are a little like softball questions, because I didn't want to like come back after grieving of me and Rachel's personal situation and take on like all these really like challenging hard questions. So I took some that were kind of easier for me to do. So forgive me there if it's a little less edgy Q&A than I've done before, but that's what I've got going on right now. So Shawn H on Facebook starts out saying, I'm wondering about extra ink around the collar and base of a nib. This seems to be the case whether I use a cartridge or fill with a converter. I wipe and soak it up and it doesn't seem to go away. Am I pulling ink away from my cartridge or the converter? Yeah, so this is not an uncommon thing. I'm going to use this Lamy Safari in a discontinued color that all of you are going to ask about and be upset that you can't get. So when you fill a pen, there's a filler hole on the back here. And so you're not just filling from the tip of the nib, but you're dipping it all the way up into the grip. Those of you who have been around the pens for a while, this is elementary stuff, and forgive me for getting really basic, but that's what's happening. So when you initially fill the pen, it's absolutely common that you will get ink all up in this area. And then you'll wipe it, with a paper towel or something like that. I actually keep a roll of paper towels right here next to me because I do it all the time. But then, you will have some extra ink that can be around here. Now, what actually happens with these pens is there is a feed inside the grip of the pen. I'm actually going to switch over to my Edison now. Oh, it's got no nib on it. How do you like that? Well, okay. I don't have a pen that I can demonstrate with, but long story short, there are fins inside this feed that act as a regulator for the ink flow. So what happens is you have your ink reservoir that's up in the grip of your, up in the body of the pen, and then you have a feed that has a very small channel that the ink flows down through. Well, if it was that one tiny little channel, if you wrote really fast or you wrote really hard and it increased the flow of the pen, then it might break that flow just by that tiny little slit that's in the feed. So it has all these fins, and basically your whole grip is filled with ink. And it allows it to kind of regulate. So when you're writing really fast, it can draw from this general area, and then when you are slowing down again, it continues to draw down, it fills up the grip again, and then you're good to go. So it's not unusual, depending on the pen's design and the ink flow and things like that, for the ink to kind of sit and hang out right around the base of that grip right there. It shouldn't be dripping out of the pen. It can sometimes cause an issue if you are gripping really closely, like if you grip around like that. Like this Lamy nib is relatively short, so it's not as much of an issue. But if you have a pen with a longer nib, you know, like this Omas, for example, and you are gripping around in the grip, and you are doing that kind of thing, you can get ink on your fingers. That's really why I hear the complaints more about that than anything else. It's either an aesthetic thing or you're getting ink on your fingers. So if that's the case, then try soaking it up with a little bit of a paper towel. You know, just take a paper towel as you are filling your pen, and just take it and kind of dab it right around the grip. So it shouldn't take but a second. You know, it'll soak it up pretty quickly. And if you see that as eventually it's kind of filling back up again, that's just kind of how the pen is. And you can try maybe writing with a different ink and see if it affects it differently, if it's really like a deal breaker for you. But initially, after you fill your pen, you're going to want to do that, you know, with the paper towel, and that's going to soak up all the excess, and it shouldn't be like causing a problem after that. But if you just kind of wipe the grip of the pen and you don't soak up that extra little area there, it might hang out there for a while after you immediately fill in the pen. So I would say if it's causing you a problem by like dripping out of the pen or getting ink all over your fingers or something like that, then it's something you need to kind of address further and maybe consider if it's like a warranty issue and you need to contact the retailer, or if it's just like a compatibility issue, like maybe that pen with that ink is not really working great for you and how you're gripping and holding it. But that's not an uncommon thing to see on most pens, so I will say that. Kristian T on Facebook says, I sprang my Omas Arte Italiana with an extra flexible nib. I adjusted it, but inflow still sucks. Should I set the feed? I don't know how to do that. Plus, is there a difference in methodology for ebonite feeds versus plastic ones? Mine has an ebonite feed. Omas went out of business, so I can't send it. This is all one sentence, by the way. Omas went out of business, so I can't send it in for repairs. What should I do? Is it possible to restore it out of this world, out of the box performance, or is it going to forever remain a fountain pen cautionary tale? So yes, your situation is definitely complicated a little bit because Omas is no more. We never got an official word about it, but it's not really around anymore. I hear that the building is still there and that there's still stuff in the building, but as a company, Omas is not really there. Now, it doesn't mean that like somebody couldn't buy the company and revive the name and like buy a lot of the equipment and the building and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that like it wouldn't be there, but like as it existed previously, Omas is not really there anymore, which means that they're not going to warranty service their stuff. So that kind of complicates things for you. Now, I will say, yeah, you're not going to officially get like an Omas warranty person, but you can definitely get a Nibmeister to fix this nib. Like, it's not that different of a nib from what they've worked with before, where you can't get it repaired by somebody who's not like an official Omas person. Not that that even exists anymore. But I would point you to John Modishaw as the first one, because he's worked on a bunch, and before Omas really went under, he was kind of the point person in the US for all of the Omas warranty stuff anyway. So he would have the most experience with that. But really, it's not even like that specialized of a thing where he would have to fix it. I think any Nibmeister worth their salt is going to be able to fix this for you. As far as you fixing it yourself, if you sprung the tines and then heat setting it is definitely not what you're going to want to do, because you're just going to continue to make it worse. Because if it's already sprung, your heat setting is not going to do it. It needs to get back into shape, and a Nibmeister is going to have to fix that. I will say that what little nib work I've done, I will say that these kind of nibs are kind of the toughest to work on. The more flexible a nib is and the softer it is, the more difficult it is to properly tune it. Steel nibs are the easiest to work on. You know, regular gold nibs are tougher, and then like flexible gold nibs are even tougher to work on because it's very easy to screw it up. So I would not say dive in and go trying to mess around with it too much yourself unless you're really just like throwing caution to the wind. You're like, whatever, I'm gonna throw it out anyway. Yeah, I would say, you know, or you're like, well, I'm gonna take it to a Nibmeister anyway. I'm gonna have to pay for it, so I might as well try to fix it myself first. You could try, but it's not the easiest thing to do. So I would say consider taking it to a, you know, kind of qualified nib person who can do it. You know, if you go to any pen show, you know, if you just show them what they have going on, they can tell you like, yeah, I can fix that, or no, I can't. So, you know, John Monteshaw for sure. Definitely like a Mike Masayama could do it, but his backlog is pretty ridiculous. I think John's backlog's pretty tough too. I don't know if, you know, one of the newer Nibmeisters, like, you know, I'm sure like Dan Smith or, you know, Mark Backus or somebody like that could probably do it. I don't see why not. I don't know what their backlog is like. I have no really affiliation with any of them, so you could certainly consider that, but that's the route that I think you need to go. All right, Thorn UPSB on Instagram says, I recently visited a pen store near me to test some pens that I'm considering to buy. The Waterman Carine, Lamy 2000, and the Pilot Vanishing Point. As the store can't sell a pen that's already been inked, they only dipped the nibs into the ink. My question is the performance of a dipped nib representative of its performance when inked up normally? I had some major skipping issues with the Carine, which didn't happen with the 2000 and the Vanishing Point. Okay, so I have all of these pens that I can show you, and I will say that all three of these pens are kind of unique as far as their like nib and feed design. So this is really kind of an interesting mix of pens to dive into. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see what's going on. So this is a Waterman Carine. There's different models of it, but what it has going on is it has an inlaid nib. And it does not have like fins in the feed. All the feed is like built into the pen. So, which is fine. It's definitely an interesting design. And I actually think it's pretty cool. But what the drawback of it is, when you dip test it, it's not really like grabbing a lot of the ink in a dipping motion. You know, when you have a pen that's like the Omas one, you know, there's a lot of the feed that's exposed here. It has all these fins. When you dip test this, it's a lot of the ink is hanging out on the nib, and you're going to get a more representative writing sample of what it would be like actually inked up. That's going to be less the case with a pen that has an inlaid nib like this, and honestly, even pens like the Lamy 2000 and the Pilot Vanishing Point. Lamy 2000 has a hooded nib, so it's a nib that the body of the grip of the pen is actually kind of covering a lot of the nib, and the Vanishing Point has this tiny little nib as well. And they do not have any fins or a lot of surface area on this nib to really grab a lot of the ink either. So these pens honestly are probably ones that would be kind of hit or miss in a dip test sometimes anyway, depending on who's dipping it and how it's going. So I would say all three of these would be some of the probably least reliable in a dip test than I would expect with, you know, another pen like the Omas. So that said, I've had good experience with my Carine. Now, I do not carry the Carine regularly, so I have not used a lot of them. Of the ones I've used, they've performed well when inked. So I think that might be part of it, but at the same time, it's not a cheap pen. I mean, this pen actually varies in price quite a bit depending on the finish that you get. This really kind of cool pattern is on the more expensive end. But you can get some that are a little less expensive that are closer in the price range to the Vanishing Point and the Lamy 2000, but even still, it's kind of a premium priced pen compared to these other two. So I would say if you're not that hot on it anyway, and you had some issues, maybe steer you more towards these. They're definitely more popular, Lamy 2000, the Vanishing Point. Unless you're just really in love with the Carine and really want it to work, then I would say go ahead and get the pen, because I suspect it's probably going to work pretty well for you. And then if it doesn't, then you can always go back to that retailer and be like, hey, this pen really didn't work that well when I was at home. And they can help you troubleshoot it. But these two are really pretty solid performers. and you really can't go that wrong with either of them. That being said, the Lamy 2000 does have a sweet spot, and some people mistake that for having flow issues. Really, though, it's a pretty consistent writing pen once you get the hang of it. So that's kind of the caveat there. But if you've already written with it and it wrote really well for you, I think you're going to be just fine. So that's what I would recommend there. All right, the Quote Master 23 on Instagram. What is the benefit of using an oblique nib holder versus a normal italic nib when doing calligraphy? So I kind of wanted to shy away from this question a little bit because I'm definitely not a calligrapher, but I do know a little bit about this question, so I wanted to at least cover it because I do get asked about it a lot. So forgive me for being kind of elementary here. If you know a lot about calligraphy, you're probably going to laugh at how basic I'm going to get, but I don't have a lot of calligraphy experience, really any of it. But I do have some experience meeting people that do calligraphy. I got to sit down with Michael Saul, a master penman, when I went to Atlanta Pen Show. That was pretty cool, and he has a handwriting system, which is pretty cool. So he talks about penmanship, and he gives all kinds of demonstrations. This is a really cool thing. I don't sell this set, but it is available at places. I don't know exactly where. I think he might sell it directly. I'm not sure, but he has all kinds of stuff. So how to write different numbers, how to write different letters. But the common thing that you'll notice with kind of the more proper like calligraphy writing, and this isn't even really calligraphy, he has other books that are more specific on calligraphy and stuff like that, which I don't know that I have handy. But then when I was there, he actually wrote me in a flourished Spencerian script. He wrote my name. So really the reason I'm showing you all this is to show that when you are writing with calligraphy in kind of the traditional sense, it's always very much on a slant, okay? And part of that is achieved by turning the page when you're writing. So, you know, if you're holding a normal pen, like such, you know, the proper kind of hand position is to turn the page about 45 degrees, right, like that. So that's when you're writing. So you can do that, but to get kind of this like intense angle, and when you're writing in this flourish kind of calligraphy, especially in this stuff with a flex nib, to get the proper flex, you would need to turn your hand pretty aggressively to do it, or you'd have to turn the page like really intensely, because you want your hand at about a 45. So in order to get the flex, you would have to turn the page basically at a 90-degree angle, which is really difficult and not really recommended. So the reason you have an oblique holder, which is this is an oblique holder. So this is a dip nib. There are no oblique fountain pens. They make oblique nibs, which is a different thing. That has to do with the grind on the tip of the nib. That's not what I'm talking about. But the oblique holder has the nib offset. They're also called offset holders too sometimes. So what that allows you to do is allows you to turn the paper at a 45-degree angle like so, and keep your hand at about a 45 degree, but the nib itself is more in line with the proper direction when you're doing your flex. So it allows you to keep the paper in the proper position, keep your hand in the proper position, and do all of your flex and loops and all that kind of stuff, but not have hand fatigue from overdoing it with your hand or overturning the paper. So it's really designed for fighting hand fatigue, which is an important thing, because when you're getting into especially this kind of flourished stuff, I shot a video of Michael Saul doing this, which I should probably share at some point, but I shot a video of him. It took him 22 minutes to do this, which I was kind of impressed. I think he was kind of really going overboard because of who I am and the fact that I was recording him on video, but he, to do that is a huge commitment of time, and if you do that a lot, there's no way you can do that with an uncomfortable hand position. So that's why they make offset or oblique holders. So when you really get into the calligraphy stuff, that pretty much becomes the standard. So that's really what it's all about. Paper. I actually have a couple of paper questions this week. This one is from brentperusual on Instagram. Forgive me if I said that wrong. As a big fan of field notes, I've accepted that only certain editions of theirs are truly fountain pen friendly. Are there any notebooks of similar size that have fountain pen friendly paper as a field notes alternative? It doesn't have to be the exact same design. Okay, so that's fair enough. So field notes, I mean, some of their stuff is very different. Like this Byline is not their normal situation. It's normally a 3.5 by 5.5 notebook. And there are some alternatives to that. There aren't a lot of like one-to-one direct alternatives to that I have, because most of what we carry is European and Japanese paper. And the 3.5 by 5.5 is an American size standard, which is not that common in European and Japanese sizes. They go by the European or the other standards. So there are some alternatives. Clairefontaine and Rhodia both have smaller kind of staple-bound pocket notebooks like these, which definitely kind of work. They're going to be a little bit smaller in size than a field notes would be. We do have Goulet branded notebooks, which use Tomoe River paper. This is a field notes size. We actually did ones in field notes size and traveler's notebook sizes, which is a little bit different. Passport traveler's notebook sizes, so it's a little bit fatter, a little bit shorter. So to show you a difference in size there, this is actually a field note size, and this is the Clairefontaine. So Clairefontaine and Rhodia are going to be this size. Field notes is going to be this size, but very similar kind of format, right? The thing I will say about the like really fine papers like these is they're going to be very ink resistant, so they're going to have more of a tendency to have a longer dry time and smear more than your field notes will. So that's something you have to get used to. These are typically like really fast, like jotting notebook, so you have to kind of like chill out. You don't want to like write and then close it up real quick, because it's going to smear and you're going to get imprinting on the other side of the page. Unless you do a little hack that I like to do, I use a bookmark that is blotting paper. So I will cut a piece of blotting paper to fit the notebook, and I'll keep it wherever I'm writing. So that way, when I write something really quick and I have the blotting paper on the other side, I can then close it quickly. The blotting paper soaks up all the extra stuff and it doesn't smear everywhere. So kind of a neat little hack. You can do that. What else is there? Apica has, I don't have samples of all of these because we just did physical inventory and I didn't want to go yanking everything off the shelf. So I only had like what I had handy in my office, which I didn't have all these sizes of pocket notebooks handy. So the Apica has a notebook that's going to be thicker. It's kind of like a more of a bound thing. It's not quite a staple bound like this. That is going to be similar in size to this. So it's called the CD10. I recommend you check that out. It's a just over a 4-inch by just under a 6-inch. So kind of a little bit different size. It's good paper. Clairefontaine classic staple bound, that's right here. And then formerly Midori, now Travelers Company notebooks makes their passport size refills, which would be very similar in size to your field notes, and the paper is pretty decent, so you can definitely check that out. And they have some, actually, they've expanded. They used to have a lot of different options within their regular size, the taller refill, and now in the passport size, their shorter one, they have like the craft paper, and they have their light paper, which is more like a Tomoe River type paper. They actually have more of that available in their passport size now, so similar kind of format to this, but with more kind of paper variety and stuff. So you may want to check out the Traveler's Notebook. And then there's a couple other that are kind of similar in size. If you actually go to gouletpens.com, you can search under paper and click on notebooks, and then you can do a filtered search for overall size. Around the A6 size is really what you're shooting for. So there's a few different brands, a few different options and formats and stuff like that there. So that's generally the size you're going for, is that 3.5 by 5.5. So anything that we're going to have our site is going to be, I mean, Field Notes, I love the brand, but as far as paper quality, it's definitely on the less fountain pen friendly side. So pretty much any other brand you're going to go with is going to be as good or better for fountain pens than that. All right, and then continuing to talk about paper, this is from BooBoo26 on Instagram. Hi, BooBoo. What paper do you think is best for beginners? So this is very kind of just basic question, which I like. Sometimes it does have like a zillion different options, and it's hard for me, being as like detailed as I am sometimes, to take a question like this and really boil it down, but I'm gonna do my best. So there's a lot to consider with paper, a lot of different factors, and I would say the thing to understand when you're just getting into like fine paper, which is what I would consider fountain pen paper to be, it can be really overwhelming. The paper world can get very confusing very quickly, so you don't want to completely overwhelm yourself. So I'm going to keep it very, very basic here as far as what I recommend. I think that as far as a general brand goes, in terms of consistency, quality, general acceptedness as a wonderful fountain pen friendly paper, I think Rhodia is a really good way to go. It's definitely the first one that I heard about when I didn't know anything about fountain pens. I heard about Rhodia, and for good reason. And literally the paper has not changed in its quality and consistency in the 7 years that I've been using it, and it's been around since the 1930s, and it's really, really consistently made. So I'm a big fan of Rhodia. This is the Rhodia, this is actually the premium, their off-white one, which is a little bit thicker, a little bit higher quality, but their white Rhodia paper, which is right here, is really kind of the standard. So this is a Rhodia dot pad. This is actually what I used to do all my Nibnook testing, but it's white paper, 80 gram. It is very smooth, especially by kind of the normal, inkjet paper that we're all used to. Very smooth. You can get smoother, but this is really kind of a great all-around accepted fountain pen paper. As far as which one I'd recommend, this is the larger size. Not necessarily, this is more like a legal pad type size. There's a smaller one that's kind of the A5 size, which is half this size. This size. I would recommend getting the white, probably lined, if you just get one paper. The dot one is cool, but it's a 5 millimeter ruling on the dot. That can take some getting used to. I mean, everybody really starts to love it once they get used to it, but coming like completely new to paper, I would say get lined. It's gonna be a 7 millimeter ruling, which is like a traditional American college ruled. So that's not gonna be a big transition for you to come over. Get the A5 size because it's a nice all around pad. It's gonna run you about $5 or somewhere thereabouts. It's not a huge investment, but it's gonna be a great introduction to fine paper. I think that's a great introduction. If you're coming over more from like the journaling world, like Moleskines and Piccadilly and that kind of stuff, I would say Leuchtturm is a great notebook for you to consider. Not only because it's great quality, but because the format of it is going to be really consistent and kind of what you're used to. This one in particular is, like an army green color. This one actually, this is my personal one, so it has a pen loop on here with a little Lamy 2000 in there because I like it. And it's got some cool features on it. It's got a table of contents. It's got a date at the top. It's got numbers. You can get it lined, you can get it dot, you can get it blank, you can get it lots of different ways. There's all kinds of different colors to choose from. But the A5, which is this size format, very, very similar to Moleskine, which a lot of people who are coming into the fountain pen world are already familiar with that brand, but Moleskine is not great paper for fountain pens. Generally speaking, this is a really great way to go. And then lastly, I kind of broke out another one as far as stationery, so if you want to get into like pen paling and all this kind of stuff. So you have like your kind of all-around paper, which is the Rhodia. You have your journaling, which is Leuchtturm. I think for stationery, there's a lot of different ways you can go with stationery, get into some crazy stuff, but the one that I loved the most that was a great introduction for me was Clairefontaine Triumph. It's super smooth. It's just white paper. You can get it plain or lined. This one is lined. Line ruling is 8 millimeters, so it's a little bit larger. It's more like a standard ruling instead of a college ruling. And then you can get blank too. What's really cool about the blank is that it actually comes with one lined sheet. You can put the lined sheet behind the blank one, and then you can still see it through there, so you can write a letter and you can kind of fake out the person you're sending the letter to, because they're going to think you write amazingly straight across the page, but they don't know that you actually have a guide to help you out. But the final product is this blank paper, so it looks really cool. So really smooth, nice paper, feels really great. It's a great writing experience, so I would urge you to try out the Clairefontaine Triumph. So those would be my top 3 as far as great introductions for beginners for paper. And last question I have this week, this is from xsmatchet, I don't know, on Instagram. Every day at work, I write a quote or thought of the day. Oh, this is a personal question, by the way, if I didn't say that already. Every day at work, I write a quote or thought of the day and share it with my coworkers. My favorite quote is a song lyric. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. What are some of your and your team's favorite quotes? I have kind of a soft spot for quotes. I don't know why. It just kind of is how I operate. I read a lot. I find, that, I don't memorize things very well. It was actually kind of hard in school for me sometimes because I don't memorize words well. I remember faces great. I'm not great with people's names. I definitely remember experiences, and I have a pretty decent memory when it comes to like tactile things, like how things feel or ink colors and stuff like that. But man, when it comes to just straight up memorizing, it's very difficult for me. So as much as I love quotes, I have a very difficult time remembering anything with any significant length to it. Even like Christmas songs I sang since I was a kid, can't remember the lyrics. It's really kind of frustrating. But for me, short quotes that are really impactful to me are something that I can remember and leave an impact. So I actually really like quotes a lot. I have a running kind of list of my favorite quotes that I pull out of books and authors that I really like, and business leaders, and kind of other significant people, spiritual leaders, or just things like that I find inspiration from. I have a spreadsheet that's going that currently has, I think I counted them up, it's 226 different quotes that I have right now. So, and it's kind of an ever-growing list. And I even do like a daily, I'm not super great about doing it daily, but I'll try to do a daily morning motivation on Snapchat, if you follow me there, where I'll talk about, whatever various quote that I feel is pertinent to that day for me. So that's really kind of, something that is impactful for me. So I do have some of my more impactful quotes and things that I talk about. I keep that running list in the spreadsheet, partly because I like to share a quote every morning when I meet with my leadership team. I share kind of a motivational quote that's kind of pertinent for what's going on for that day. So I like to have a big list that I can draw from. So some of my tops is this one is from David Allen, for the author of Getting Things Done, which I've talked about a lot. It says that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Very important to keep that in mind, especially for me running a business. I have a lot of opportunities, but I can't pursue all of them. You have a lot of things you're trying to do, but you don't have as much time, or whatever financial resources, whatever it is. You find that the busier you get, the more your life is run by constraints than it is by opportunities. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Another good one, this is from Teddy Roosevelt, former US president, says, "Far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." Boy, that really just rings true with me, because I work really hard, but I love what I do. So I can say that, yeah, I'm really fulfilled raising children. Absolutely. That is working hard at work worth doing. There's a lot of good things that can kind of fit into it. It doesn't even have to be in like a business context, but charity work, child rearing, all of these things, relationships, friendships, all of that rings true with that. This one is from Greg McEwen, author of Essentialism, who I've talked about a bit in previous Q&As as well. Says, "If it isn't a clear yes, it's a clear no." And that one is one that I continually get brought up, and I get thrown back at me sometimes here, even for people that I'm working with here at Goulet Pens. Because again, I'm super opportunistic, super wanting to take on more than I can really chew sometimes. And when we're considering picking up or dropping a certain product, or pursuing a certain piece of content that we want to put out, or there's all kinds of various opportunities that I could talk about for things that we do here on a regular basis. And sometimes it's really not clear whether we should do things. And a lot of things are trade-offs. It's like, should we do this thing? Because then we can't do this other thing. I don't really know. And it's like, well, if it's not a clear yes, then it should be a no. It's kind of this like, let's eliminate the gray area here. If it's not absolutely let's go do it, then we shouldn't do it. That's kind of a high performer mentality. But that book Essentialism, it talks about like only doing the things that are most essential. This one is really good. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who's the current president of Liberia, and she was the first elected female head of state in Africa in history. Also a Nobel Prize winner. Very interesting lady to read up on, and very inspiring and pretty bad mamma jamma, if you ask me, in a good way. So her quote is actually one that we have on a lot of the bookmarks that we send out here. Says, "If your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough." That's a good one. This one is from Thomas Edison, the inventor. It says, "Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work." So that's one that I like too. Kind of reminds you like, yeah, you got to get your hands dirty sometimes. This one is an unknown author, but I really like it a lot and throw it around. Experience gives the test first and the lesson later. I like that a lot. And then last one, this is from Zig Ziglar, who's a motivational speaker, very interesting guy with a Mississippi twang. Says, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. Very pertinent, very self-serving kind of way to think, but you can see kind of a theme here. A lot of my quotes are kind of work-oriented because that's what I do a lot. I love to work. But yeah, kind of cool stuff. So those are some of the ones that are more inspiring for me. But definitely I have a whole, I mean, mine cover the full gamut, but those are the ones that kind of stick out and I end up using more for me and my team here, kind of based on the context of your question, that are the more memorable ones. So I'm going to wrap up for this week, ending a little bit early, and that's okay. You know, so I'm going to go a little deeper here on the question of the week. Normally I try to roll it off of a pen question or something like that, but you know, given my personal, you know, events that have happened in my life, you know, it's caused me to be a little bit more reflective. And by all means, don't share anything that you're not comfortable sharing. But I do think it can be somewhat, you know, important to share and just open up with others about things that we've had, and it's also important to celebrate things we've overcome. So my question of the week for this week is kind of a personal one, but it's what's a major setback that you've had to overcome in your life? Share in whatever detail you feel comfortable, but I think there's a lot of us that have some pretty amazing stories to tell about things that we have overcome in our lives, and I think it'll be really inspiring to hear some of your stories and for you all to read each other's. So please leave those in the comments on YouTube and on the blog. I think that'd be really, I'd be really honored if you would do that. So that's it for this week. You know, of course, you can check out a lot of the products I talked about on gouletpens.com. You can leave comments and I will do my best to follow up with them, though I will say I've scaled back a little bit on my own kind of personal social media stuff just because of the magnitude of everything I've got going on right now. And so I will say that you know, I may not be as responsive personally on some of my channels. I have not been for the last week for sure, and I may kind of be easing back into things, so I'll just kind of give a little disclaimer there. But even still, you guys are a really strong community and you got a lot of good engagement with each other too, which is kind of cool. You know, and definitely my team will help to pick up my slack as well. So thanks for being so understanding. Your support is really meaningful and almost overwhelming, honestly, to have. But you know, I'm really just honored to be doing what I do here, and it's good to be kind of coming back and easing into things and getting back a little sense of normalcy. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on in my world. Thank you for sitting in on Q&A this week. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you know, leave a comment if you're able to do so. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great weekend and a great rest of your week, and right on.